Okay, this is a hopefully pretty short video on the second half of the Ogival Pattern assignment. In the first half, you took a reference that you were interested in and broke it down into an abstraction using the textured screens. So this is my version of that, just mocked up in Photoshop. And the second phase of this is that you're going to be developing sort of embellishments, charms, beads, whatever you want to call them. They're going to be very small, laser cut acrylic, and you can either focus on covering the whole piece or a section. If you're going for a denser coverage and you want to just cover a section of it, that's fine too. So I'm going to take you into the process of doing that in Illustrator, but first I'm going to say that a good jumping off point for embellishment is to go back to your original pattern and look for inspiration there. So I'm going to be doing, sorry, I'm going to be doing some shapes based on some of the flowers in the original, and I'll just keep it really simple and go into this area here and just get some very basic shapes from in here. So I'm going to go right over to Illustrator. Obviously you can do a whole sketching thing if you want to, but if you want to pull up your sketch or if you want to pull up the original, you open it in Illustrator, and then the first thing that you want to do is actually lock your file. So when you open something in Photoshop, the rasterized image is going to be sort of floating in the artboard, and the first thing you want to do is lock the image. So you can lock it by either clicking on it and saying object lock, or a lot of times what's easier is object lock selection. What can be easier is to just lock the whole layer. So you can also go over to the layers menu and click on the lock, and that will keep it from moving around while you're trying to draw. After doing that, I'm going to add another layer, and I'm going to use the drawing tools over on the left-hand side. Let me change that so you can only see the Illustrator ones. And I'm going to work with a really obvious color. So I'm going to make a really bright color to work on this ground, and then I'm going to work not with a fill, but I'm going to switch that and work only with a stroke. So when I work only with a stroke and there's a none dash here, that basically means that I'm only going to be drawing with an outline. And I'm going to zoom in. Just find a good area here. And zoom in here and work with one of these shapes to develop a charm. So there are a few ways to draw in Illustrator. One is to work with the pencil tool and just sort of freehand draw it. So let's say that's the shape that I want to work with. The problem with freehand drawing it like this is that it is not very even looking. So you would think that you could draw that shape really easily, but what it's doing is it's laying down a lot of anchor points. So these anchor points are going to make it harder for you to laser cut it, because it's going to slow it down, it's going to make it jaggedy, it's going to use up too much time. So what I want you to do instead is actually use the pen tool. So the pen tool is the third one down, and this allows you to click what's called anchor points and drag what are called Bezier handle curves. We'll call them handles from here on out of the line as you go. So if I want to draw a really smooth shape, I actually only need a few points to do that with, and those points, those anchor points, are where the laser cutter is going to stop. It doesn't stop for any real length of time, but if there are a lot of them, it adds up, so that's why you want to do that. So drawing the shape that you want to cut, and then using the selection tools, which are the first two tools, move them over, you can see. The first two tools are on the toolbar. One would let you select the entire option. The next one would let you select parts of the object. So if I decide, you know what, I actually want to move things around a little by the anchor points, I can do it with that selection tool. Definitely takes a little getting used to, and you can also change the shape by going in to an anchor point and clicking on the handle coming from that anchor point and changing it that way. So I would recommend working with very simple shapes for this. You just don't know how the material is going to cut. And I also want you to think about the potential of where a hole can go in this so that you can stitch it onto the fabric. So a hole here could be, you know, I'll just draw some circles here. So I'm going to the circle tool and I'm going to hold the shift key down. This hole here would mean that the bead would kind of hang down like a teardrop. This one here, obviously it would be hanging from the other direction. You could also do something like copying it. So I'm holding the Option key down and clicking and dragging, and it's copying that object that I just drew, and put 2 holes down there with the intention of stitching through like a button. So there are a lot of different ways to think about how you're going to attach this. And also, I'm just going to make one more shape by copying it. You can also use engraving with the laser cutters. So you might want to say, I want this red line to be the cut, but I want the piece to have an engraved stem on it, for instance. I don't have a lot of room to work with here for engraving, but having that second engraving line in your file will mean that you'll be able to actually add surface to it, and then we could bring that cut hole in and you would see the red lines being cut and the blue lines being engraved. And there's file specifications for when you do your laser cut training on what weight line and what color you're using, but I'm just making it really obvious. So once you have your shape cut or engraved, it would look like, here, let me get rid of that one, we'll do this one. It would look something like this. I'm not going to get into a lot of advanced Illustrator here, but I am going to just show you what it would look like. So let's say that was your laser cut piece and you did a bunch of them, and it's going to be acetate, so it might be kind of translucent. I'm going to pretend you cut pink acetate. I'm going to just bring it back over to my file. Then I can think about where would I like to place this within my design. So maybe I'm embellishing it so things are hanging down in the same area that I pulled that idea from. Or maybe, you know, I have a new idea where I'm going to place them. But that should give you the idea of what you're looking towards. You can get as advanced as you want to, but I would keep the shapes simple and think about how it's going to be hanging when you attach it.